Welcome to part 2 of the Flying Focus video bus for the 11th Busiversary. We've been doing this for almost 12 years now, and we'll be talking about the clips from shows that we had done in the previous year. We do this as a means of using video as a tool for social change and voicing the voiceless. This will give you some idea of what we've been doing. Daniel, what is this next clip coming up, and who did it?
Well, this show concerns Ken Saro-Wiwa, a Nigerian activist who was executed by the military regime in Nigeria in 1995.
Right.
His son, Ken Wiwa, talks about his father's legacy and also about the efforts to hold Royal Dutch Shell accountable for its actions in this tragedy. In March of 2002, surviving relatives of Ken Saro-Wiwa were happy to learn that a U.S. federal court had ruled that their suit against Royal Dutch Shell can go forward in the United States.
Why the world, more than ever, needs an international arbitration process, especially in places where the local authority is too weak to resist or too dependent on the multinational. Is it time? I think it's time to strengthen our cause for a body that has sufficient clout to mediate between the voiceless and the powerful in our global village. In the meantime, I continue to struggle to be given space to hear our story. But with Shell colonizing public space with their glowing logos and shiny commercials, I think it gets harder and harder to seduce the media that the Oregonian story has run its course. And without the oxygen of media, we cannot get to concerned individuals, we cannot mobilize public opinion like before. My father once told me not to worry about the negative publicity that he was already attracting. I mean, once my father became a public figure, you began to see all these stories about his private life and about where he was, about his character. And that came out of not only the Nigerian military's propaganda machine, but it was also encouraged by Shell. And I think that's what tends to happen with people. Some of these stories come out and we don't know who these people are, and so blatant lies are spread about them, and it confuses the general public as to what exactly is the truth. So again, it's another reason why those of us who are concerned about human rights abuses need to be vigilant, because governments and multinationals have worked out a very clever strategy of nullifying the effects of protests that are centered on individuals like Ken Saro-Wiwa. And I think it's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, was really to set the record straight.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Simmons from Flying Focus Video Collective, and this is Mischief alias Peace Dog, who has been in a number of rallies and marches in her life for many different things, for peace, for animal rights. And now at 17, she is stationary a bit more. Anyway, what I want to talk about is the Cuba video. It's the World Women's Court that went to Cuba, and women spoke about the difficulties that the economic embargo has on their lives and on their families. And the Women's World Court has been in so many places in the Southern Hemisphere. Usually it's women who have suffered violence, and they have a jury of eminent activists from around the world that listen to the women as they talk about what has happened.
I am participating in the World Court of Women against the blockade of Cuba, and I am one of the jurors.
And what does that mean?
That means that I must listen to the testimonies of the women who have suffered as a result of the blockade, and then give some kind of a statement at the end of it.
Well, this is a brief report of the jury of the World Court, which will accompany the Cuban delegate to the High Commission on Human Rights meeting in Geneva. as we speak. And it's simply basically a witness with a summary of recommendations from the jury members to the High Commission that this issue of the blockade needs to be addressed. It constitutes genocide. It constitutes a breach of Cuban sovereignty. It, in fact, undermines so many different international laws. We've not actually listed them all, I believe. But it's an outrageous, unacceptable endeavor, which the world needs to know about and then address and impose through the United Nations restrictions, constraints, sanctions possibly on the United States in order to force the United States to end this particular form of aggression against the people of Cuba.
I think Cuba was a very special court right from the very beginning. It was very focused. It had this one issue of the blockade against Cuba. We prepared this court for 3 years. We've had 3 public hearings in different parts of the country. We've heard many, many testimonies. The women have worked extremely hard. The Federation of Cuban Women and the Institute of Philosophy, my friends there at the Institute, have a very special way of working.
So this next program was taped by PC Peri and edited by Norm Wires, who couldn't be here with us tonight. This was Norm's first program that he edited, and I think he did a fine job. This is Marilyn Sewell, the minister at the First Unitarian Church here in Portland, talking about how children in our society are seen as economic commodities and basically used to make money by corporations.
We will always and forever remember September 11th, the disbelief, the shock, the horror, the counting and recounting of the dead, the images of the imploding towers filling our screens over and over and over again. I heard that one 10-year-old said, "Cool," when he saw the buildings come down. Cool. And by the time our children become teenagers, they have seen an estimated 18,000 violent murders on television, not to mention all manner of other mayhem, including exploding cars and buildings. In their video games, they regularly kill and blow up the enemy aggressors. Now, can we blame them if they do not know reality from virtual reality? Are we really surprised that natural human empathy is deadened in many of our children? Because violence sells. It's really that simple. The other response to September 11 that I want to share with you came from a young adult, in this case a young woman who is a new graduate of a prestigious law school. She happened to be visiting in my home during the Thanksgiving holidays, and I asked her about her response to the attacks on the World Trade Center. And she said, "Well, I'll tell you what I did. I immediately called up the airlines and booked some cheap flights. I knew that the prices would go way down because of this." I have to say that I was dumbfounded. But when I think about it, why shouldn't she think this way? From her earliest days, she has been targeted as a consumer. And she has learned to be a good consumer, how to get the most for her money.
This is my first year with Flying Focus Video Collective, and I got involved with Flying Focus through, I saw a flyer, and it sounded interesting. I saw all the different videos that Flying Focus had to offer, and a lot of the topics were of stuff that I couldn't find anywhere else. And that really interested me, so I called up and volunteered to do some editing. And the first video that I edited was, I believe, Christian Parenti, and then the second one was Marion Wright Edelman.
And what's she talking about?
And in the Marion Wright Edelman video, she's talking about Stand for the Children, which is an organization that she, I believe, helped to start, and her son is now running it. And for the most part, she seems to be attempting to relay to people the wisdom inherent in just basic family values, really simple values, and she talks a lot about when she was growing up and how her parents, the relationship with her parents that she had, and the values they instilled in her.
So not only did my parents set an example, through their leadership, growing up, through all the things they did to make society better, they also helped develop my leadership by giving me opportunities to grow.
And he makes me look awfully good, doesn't he? And when I think about children growing up in homeless shelters, we've gotten used to shelters. Shelters are no places for children. They need decent houses. Imagine having no place to put a picture on the desk, or to have your mom and yourself stand in line for hours a day and not knowing who we're going to sleep that night and get up at 7 in the morning to try to get ready for school, and then they have to be back in line. It's just wrong. And we wonder what in the world our children are doing getting into trouble. And so the more I loved my children, and I loved them more in life and myself, the more I wanted to make sure that other people's children and what our public would have the same opportunities, because my children got to walk down the streets with those children. Those children have to share a nation with my children. And so part of parenting, I thought, which was the message of my own parents, is that you want to show children that they are empowered to change what they don't like, that people can make a difference, and that it was important that I cooked brownies, and it was important that I had dinner, and for me it was important that I attended their sports events and volunteered in their schools, but it was equally important to show them that as a mother and as a father, we also cared about justice in the world, because that is the legacy that I had as a child growing up. It was both.
So that was Marion Wright Edelman. Now you also taped Christian Parenti, and or you edited it. Did you tape it too, or just edit?
I just edited the Christian Parenti video.
I think PC taped that one. So what was that all about? What was he on?
Oh, he was talking about 911, and he had a lot of really interesting stuff to say about just the prison industrial complex and its existence, and how it kind of works, and how we have to band together and work together as units and recognize certain ways that things already work if we're going to have a chance to change things and make them more like we'd like them to be. It's really well articulate, well spoken.
Excellent. Did you talk about civil liberties issues too? And
oh yeah, definitely.
Now, you can be sure there are interests in LA who would like the federal government to round up all of the key activists on secret evidence and get rid of them and shut that movement down. And they don't do that because they can't, because the left organizes, and also because public opinion just isn't up to speed. It's not I don't think the average person would be willing to go along with the mass use of secret evidence. They have the room now to use it selectively, but do they have the room to use it on a mass scale? Likewise, the material witness law, they use that, but they don't use it as often as you might think. And when they do, attorneys tend to attack and try and limit its use. So, and if it got out that they were, rounding up every activist they didn't like and holding them as a material witness, I think that there would probably be, difficulties even from the mainstream. So what this gets at is the difference between the letter of the law and the life of the law. The lived application of the law is not the same as the letter of the law, and the real life of the law is conditioned by the balance of power between the people and the state, by political organizing, by culture, by public opinion. And that is one of the key terrains on which this whole USA Patriot Act is going to be fought out. Not necessarily in the courts, but in the realm of attitudes and organization and culture.
Hi, once again I'm Dan Handelman, and I had the pleasure this year of being able to tape a woman named Kelly Campbell, who is one of the founding members of September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows. And she visited Portland in June of 2002, and she spoke about her organization, which is families of September 11th victims who died in the attacks on Washington, D.C. and New York, and the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. But their message is not in our name, that they don't want the United States to retaliate with violence, and they don't want people to be using that as an excuse to further the violence that's going on in the world. And she brought with her a slideshow of her trip to Afghanistan. She actually took a trip with some of the other members of her group to see the victims in Afghanistan of the U.S. war there.
I'm standing here before you today because on September 11th, my life was changed forever. On that day, Barry Amundsen, my partner, and I were at home in Oakland, California, and the phone rang at about 7:15 in the morning. It was Barry's mom, and she was crying. And she said, "Turn on your television. There are airplanes flying into buildings. And they've hit the Pentagon." And of course, we knew that that's where Barry's younger brother Craig would be, because that's where he worked as a graphic designer for the Army. And in the hours and days that followed, we learned that the worst was true, that Craig was among the missing and among those thousands of people whose lives were lost on that tragic day. Anifa was living with her mother and her brother's wife and their 4 children, and with her son here. And when that bomb fell in this neighborhood, it killed Anifa's mother and her brother's wife and their 4 children. It also took the sight from her eye. You can see there's a scar and her eye is blurry. Anifa and her son, when we met them, were living with her uncle and his family. And we've since learned that that's actually a pretty abusive situation. But she has nowhere else to go. It's very difficult for women in Afghanistan to earn any kind of living.
In May 2002, I visited Iraq for my second trip with Voices in the Wilderness, which is a Chicago-based campaign to end the sanctions. And I was able to bring my video camera and videotape what we saw in the hospitals, at the water and sewage treatment plants, and out and about. And we learned a lot about the people who are living in Iraq under the horrible conditions that have been there for a long time. And now, with a looming threat of war, we are hoping that people will realize there are 23 million people in Iraq and not just one. And maybe we can think about peaceful ways to resolve international conflicts that don't involve hurting people.
Some of them with mild congenital abnormalities, they like in this patient. Right. He has a short limb, as you see, and abnormal limbs.
So
and this is a congenital abnormality.
He will have difficulty walking, but
yes, sure. Yes. He can't walk at all.
We're at the Shat al-Arab, and we're looking at some of the water that is going to be taken into the water treatment facility, and it won't be so yucky, but it will. So they're going to clean it and make it better for human consumption and send it to the Basra area.
After bomb, changed to Al-Amiriya bomb shelter, because the name of this area Al-Amiriya. And it's quite known for everybody that civilian people not included in the military operation, because they are not part of the war. On 13 of February 91 at 4 o'clock early morning, this shelter suddenly attacked by 2 missiles, guided by laser, and the weight of each one 2 tons. The first one penetrated like a drill, make this hole, and all the women, children sleep on the beds. This explosion inside them, and when explode, killed immediately 408.
Pneumonia. Respiratory problem.
How long?
4 days.
And how old is the baby?
7 months.
7 months.
Our hope is with you to help us to raise the sanction.
Right, so I'm back now with Frank Mahoney, who, how long have you been working with Flying Focus, Frank?
Well, probably in and out, probably about maybe 10 years or so.
Wow, that's great. And we did a show together around a rally that was asking, is Iraq the next target in the war on terrorism? That would happen in January of 2002. You want to talk a little bit about that show?
You know, now that you brought that up, I didn't even know what the rally was for, but I did come out with my camcorder just to get it out and get it rolling again, and there was an awful lot of speakers there talking about about Iraq and what Iraq. I don't remember it too much, except that we both worked on it together at home. It was my first private project that I was able to actually edit at home with my own PC. So I thought it was real fascinating for me to get my high camcorder out of retirement, out to do something for a worthwhile cause, and then come out and then put it together at home. And me being a person that always felt that I always wanted to make a difference in this world, and always wanted to get involved with communication, or at least being a participant in this political struggle that we have, and I think it's neat to be able to do that, and I was glad that we were able to do something about that that footage.
11 years ago, my heart broke. And the more I read, the more I talk to people, the more I sense that there's no sense to war.
We stand here tonight on the eve in which we celebrate the legacy of a man of nonviolence and peace. And as we did 11 years ago, we say again tonight that war is not the answer, that those who suffer are the children, and that we must put an end to that.
In the case of Iraq, they have imposed what is called total sanctions. They are economic, military, political, diplomatic, cultural, and academic, which is to say that essentially Iraq is blockaded to ideas, to scholarship, to money, to investments, to travel, to everything you can think of.
I'm also a witness to the pain and suffering and the misery the Iraqi people are going through in the last 11 years. As last year I went with Ramsey Clark. It was the first U.S. delegation to actually fly into Iraq after 10 years because they weren't allowing any civilian planes to fly because due to the no-fly zones. So we broke the sanctions last year, even though the United States government warned against it.
I wanted to talk about a rally that I videotaped a couple weeks ago. It was a peace rally. It was about maybe an upcoming war with Iraq, and an awful lot of the people there were very much against it. Now, what I remember most, and you might see some of the rally or footage in a clip or something, but what I remember most of all the rallies that I've taped and all the responses I've got from people is that when I went up with a microphone, I did not have to pay any attention to the people, whether they were going to say something or not going to say something, because almost everybody, 99% of the people that put a camera and a mic to them, they had something to say.
I support Barbara Lee's resolution that she introduced to the House. I think it's really important that the UN comes in and does the inspections. I think it's obvious that the Bush administration is just upping the ante as far as the inspectors. And, you know, Bush doesn't want the inspectors to go in. He wants a war for oil. So I think that's pretty obvious. I'm thoroughly disgusted with the media. I don't know what media you're from, but you know, the American people are not getting the real story on this. And but I also hear lots of reports that senators and Congress people are hearing from their constituents that they don't want this war. I've heard numbers, it's 500 to 1, 1,000 to 1 against the war. They're not standing up for us, so we have to do it ourselves, and we have to be out in the street. And it can't just be the peaceniks. It's got to be the moms and the dads and the kids and the grandmas and the workers and everybody.
I would say my kids brought me, trying to teach them alternative ways to solve conflict, and so war seems like not the right way to solve a conflict. So, and this one has trouble going to sleep at night because he's worried about missiles falling and bombs falling, and so I want to try to give them some peace of mind.
You're here today
because I have children, and there are Iraqi children too.
Look, I'm from the land of Gandhi, you know, and whether it's there or here, it means the same, you know. I don't want to see anyone die.
Well, I'm against the war in Iraq, and I'm real frustrated with the Senate hearings, and I want my voice to be heard.
Thanks for joining us for the 11th Busiversary. And Dan here, how about you? I mean, I've been in and out of the Flying Focus for about the last 10, 11 years, but I know you've been there every inch of the way. So,
it's true. I've been doing this for a long time.
Do they have any phone numbers in which people might want to contact?
Yeah,
Flying
I mean,
Focus?
yes, absolutely. And you can get involved too. I hope you realize that it's easy to do. You pick up a camera. And if you want to get involved, our phone numbers are 503-239-7456 and 503-321-5051. Our email address is ffvc@agora.rdrop.com. And we hope that you'll tune in every week to see the Flying Focus video bus. And thanks for joining us tonight.
And remember, you too can make your videos at home too.